Awesome. Okay, so we are going to be having our company meeting education today. Let me just go into present mode and share my screen. Bear with me one quick second. All right, hopefully you guys can all see the screen. What we're going to be discussing today is other brokerages addenda, which is really important to understand when you're writing an offer. But before we get into that, we're going to go through a few things real quick. There's some new people that are joining us. I want to always make sure that we honor what KW is about and our platform, building careers worth having and businesses worth owning, lives worth living, experiences worth giving, and legacies worth leaving. All this stuff is obviously, you've seen all this stuff before. God, family, business in that order. That's something that's super important to us. This is our belief system. Hey, look at it's Anne. Anne loves this, I'm sure. Everyone, if you guys see all of our new people that joined the Market Center, welcome. Anne, Corinne, Chelsea, Olivia, they're all on Anne's team. Welcome, guys. Margarita join, David join, Amanda. Thank you guys for joining. Congratulations to all the top producers. Look at that. Anthony Leonard Pache is number one. Congratulations, birthday boy. And all the other top producing people. Here's some stats. And I'll send all this being recorded. So we'll send all this stuff out to you guys as well. Some numbers. What's new in Honolulu? Some COVID update stuff. Just FYI, it's still very tricky navigating through what the county requirements and state requirements are, so forth. But wear your masks in the office when you're going to and from in your own office. If you rent an office space, that's fine. If you're in the training room being stationary or eating and taking a mastermind, that's fine. But if you're moving about, just make sure you have your mask on, wash your hands often if you can. We try to limit it for no more than 10 people in a space at any given time. That's per the county rules. And then there's a ton of command classes. So we're entering the holidays, and sometimes people kind of shut it down during the holidays. Don't stop learning and don't stop growing. There's a lot of things that are coming up in command. So this is just command. It's not even what we're talking about locally. Look at your training calendar for that. I'm not talking about what's happening on the board level on MLS, because that's another calendar as well. But just in command, I grabbed a few of the classes that I thought were absolutely worth sharing. So if you logged into to command and then clicked on the connect link, you'll see all these different things. But these are really, really good stuff that's coming up. So if you want to host a holiday event via Zoom, there's a class on that. 7 ways to win before noon. That's about time blocking. If you're looking to build a team, the team structures is a good one. If you are a dual career, which many of you are, this is a great one. Lisa, this might be a great one for you to know for your agents too, and to jump in with how dual career agents win in 2022. And then there's a slide for this too. But K-Score is, if you guys don't know, is Keller Williams has opened up a real estate school, and that real estate school is going to be free, which is really amazing. And there's no strings attached or anything like that. But as you guys know, Keller or state of Hawaii takes a long time to get things done with licensing and those kind of things. So the Keller Williams School of Real Estate, which is K-Score, has already put in the application. We're just waiting for approval, but we're already starting this process. So if anyone knows any not yet licensed people that want to get into real estate, we have a product for them, which is an instructor-led schooling that doesn't cost them anything at all. So just let me know. You can reach out to me and I can kind of give you more information about that, which if you guys want to build your downline and grow and all that other kind of stuff, that K-Score thing is an absolute game changer and super disruptive. So all the schools that offer pre-licensing right now, imagine we're going to be charging $0 and they're still going to be charging, $1,000 or whatever it is. So that's going to be an amazing thing. Here's the official flyer for that and the logo for that, Keller Williams School of Real Estate. It's partnered up with Kaplan University. So they're going to do pre-licensing. They're going to do something called KW Prep, and then continuing education. So KW Prep is kind of like additional information on how, because the licensing stuff is how not to get sued, right? It's all the ethics stuff and the things that you should know. But there's no information, at least offered from a schooling perspective, on how to be successful in real estate. So that's what K Prep does. And so we're doing that to get people Kellerized, to get them in the right frame of mind to start learning and growing and making money and so forth. Another update is KW Military was launched. We're actually working on, with Chris Weaver's help, who, as well as Tyler, our marketing person here in the office, to create a military wall that honors the military as well. And yeah, so the military is coming up. KW Military has different programs and what have you that's available. So if you're active duty or a past military person, there's also some additional benefits for you too. So you can change that setting by following, going into your command and making that setting so that other people can know that what branch that you were in and that you were active duty. And take a look. Pretty cool. So if you're past military active duty, make sure that you make your update your settings in command to do that. We also have a KW pin. So we bought a handful of them for every veteran that we have in the office. If you haven't received yours, come talk to us and we have one set aside for you. Digital Maps Models course. So Maps Models is a great course that's coming up November 30th through December 9th. If you're interested, let me know. There are a ton of different classes that are coming up as well. Now trending on Outfront. Outfront is a digital magazine. They also send a hard copy typically, but it's mainly online. It's some great stuff that's in there. You can forward it to your clients as well. That's a great value touch and value add. And then there's a social content calendar, which has things that are already prepped by graphic designers that's ready to go so that you can use it super easy. Also new, Kelly is going to be going away. Kelly is the agent facing app. It's kind of like the Keller Williams version of Siri, but what's being replaced, which is much better, is Command. So Command is going to have a mobile app that's coming. So this is just a snapshot and a graphic to see what that looks like. So you'll be able to see all your contacts that you would normally see in Command, but you can see it on the app. You can see your tasks, who to call. And I think it even does, as you can see on here, if you make a call through the app, it'll log that you called, and then you can make notes. So you can keep everything organized. And if you are a team leader, you have your own team, I would highly recommend you have your agents using the app, because then you can, at 30,000 feet, you can see what leads are being touched and communicated with and what still needs to be contacted and so forth. So you can guys get real dialed in and purposeful about what you're doing. Also in designs, tons of new holiday graphics that can suit all your needs. So if you haven't done so already, check that out. There's also personally branded magazines. So there's tons of just value stuff that KW is offering right now. And then lastly, I'll be remiss if I didn't talk about the TCPA, which is a Telephone Consumer Protection Act. Make sure that you guys scrub this list. This is a list that we publish on the intranet once a month, and we update it. And that's for individuals that have put themselves on the do not call list, do not call registry. It's really, really important, because if you call someone that's on that list, it is an immediate fine. And it says 500 to 1,500 per violation. But oftentimes, especially what's happening on a lot of parts on the mainland, is people are having class action lawsuits in the millions of dollars. So this is what's supposed to happen. This is violating the do not call registry is one really good way to lose your license and not practice anymore. So it's as simple as if you have a call list, just double check that and make sure that you follow that through before making your calls. Some of you use programs or systems like Mojo, which is an auto dialer. If you use an auto dialer, you got to scrub that list. So if you're importing 1,000 numbers to call, just make sure and reference that those numbers are not already on that list. So that's really, really important. If you guys have any questions on this particular process, just let me know. So we're going to get into it real quick. This shouldn't take too long. This is not overly complicated, but one of the things that I've noticed, and Tony, you can jump in at any time, as always, is when we are going into negotiating an offer and and we're on the buy side, we oftentimes are very anxious and eager to want to get into escrow to have our offer accepted. And in an environment and a landscape like we're in right now, where it's highly competitive, and there might be up one property that's highly desirable, and that there's going to be 15 offers on it or whatever it is. Sometimes we start stripping the contract of contingencies and removing things, and we're just eager to throw, whatever you want me to put your firm's addenda in there, sure, no problem. And you're kind of arranging it just for the benefit of the seller. And the first thing I would say is that the wrong way to do it? It's not wrong, but we're in the business. Our license demands and dictates that we advise and we warn the client and we educate the client, and certainly not make decisions for them. So we don't want to encourage them to strip contingencies and just accept counters or accept other firms' addenda or whatever it is just to get into escrow. We don't want to encourage that. We want to explain what everything means and allow them to be empowered enough so that they can make the decision and give us instruction on if we're going to proceed forward with that offer. That's the proper way to do that. So in this particular class, what we're going to go over is other firms' addenda. And I think that a lot of agents don't understand the impact. Well, I know this is the case. A lot of agents don't understand the impact that another firm's addenda may have on how you navigate through that escrow, that transaction. And it may have impact and changed the strategy of how you're responding to certain things like J1 when J1 comes up, or TIR, or whatever it is. So we're going to go through some of that right now. So I'm not going to read the entire thing, but I'm going to point out a couple of things. The point of this, though, is, and I'll send a copy of this video out, as I mentioned before, but the point of this class is you really got to read it. Other firms' addenda can change. We're probably picking, I don't know, 6 or 7 different firms that we'll go over, and I'll highlight different ones, but it's really, really important to read thoroughly throughout the entire addenda that you're accepting on what that means. So in locations, and just a section 2 as an example, by the way, just an indicator right now, it says L2 of the purchase contract and L3 are amended as follows. Clearly something is being changed on the purchase contract level. Seller acknowledges seller has disclosed what seller knows about termite infestation and damage on the property. That's already, I don't know how that would be the case, but that's what it says, right? Under paragraph L2, seller is required to provide a termite inspection report to buyer. Buyer understands that buyer should review the TIR. Buyer understands that any form of termite infestation has probably resulted in damage. The seller and brokerage firm may not be aware of the damage, and that this damage may be latent and undiscoverable without aggressive inspection methods. Okay, so that's one. Then continuing, buyer's rights to cancel the purchase contract based on the TIR are as follows. A, if the TIR contains no visible evidence of termite infestation or damage caused by termites, buyer may not cancel the purchase contract. So here's this is a potential big one, in that if you feel as though you are pretty good and understand well, and maybe even a master of the purchase contract and all of its content, if you thought that and you didn't read another firm's addenda, this is a perfect example as to how you may not proceed normally with something that you normally would, because this completely changed it. And then continuing B, if the TR indicates visible evidence of infestation and or damage caused by termites, the buyer has 5 days upon receipt of the TR to review and accept the property or cancel the purchase contract pursuant to paragraph 03 of the purchase contract. Continuing C, in the event there is visible damage of infestation, seller is required under paragraph L2 to order and pay for recommended treatment of the condition. Once seller completes recommended treatment and or provides the disclosure of termite damage required under paragraphs L3 and I2. I2 is amended disclosure, and buyer accepts property as is with respect to the discovered termite infestation and or termite damage. Buyer may not later cancel the purchase contract due to that same condition. And finally, D, add to L3, buyer is aware that the TIR may fail to address termite damage. If buyer is concerned that termite damage may affect the structural integrity of improvements, then buyer is advised to have experts of buyer's choice assess damage under paragraph J1. If the J1 inspection has already been completed, seller agrees to permit the damage inspection under the terms of paragraph J3. The inspection shall be done no later than 3 days from the discovery of the termite damage. The buyer has 5 days from the date of the termite damage inspection to accept the property or terminate the purchase contract. So what this one is saying too is typically TRR happens when after J1. But what it's saying is if there's damage, it's considered to be done or inspected in the time frame of J1. So you need to either have the inspector know that already and note that and buyer be comfortable with it, or you would have had to have a different expert during that time frame. This one is a big one. It comes up in a few different firms' addenda that I've seen before. As you know, the SRPDS, which is I1, and then of course I2, which is an amended SRPDS, is required by statute. So it's required by law. It's not a favor. It's not just binding in this contract. It's not, hey, would you mind filling this thing out? It's required. And so in this particular case, and I don't agree with any of this, so we can talk about that further as well, but seller's obligation upon later discovered information in accordance with provisions of HRS 508D-9, all written records obtained by or provided to buyer shall be considered an amended seller's disclosure statement, and the discovery date shall be the date buyer receives the written later discovered information. Reports include but are not limited to title reports, inspection reports, survey reports, termite inspection reports, condominium, cooperative, subdivision, and PUD reports. PUDs, documents, and rental matters, property matters. Buyer shall provide seller with a written acknowledgement within 5 days of receipt, so on and so forth. So what this is saying is, if you receive you're on the buy side, you receive the home inspection report from the home inspector, that is now considered an amended disclosure. That information is part of that. And I will switch over to this real quick because I want to make reference to that. This is the actual form, the SRPDS, and it says here, right in the middle, in all bold, must be completed by seller only. There's nothing in this document that suggests in any way that because the buyer discovered something through a third party of their choosing, and a report was provided to them, that can be considered part of that. It says it's clear as day that must be completed by seller only. So what this does is it creates a little bit of a conflict, a legal conflict, which hasn't been tested. To my knowledge, it hasn't been tested yet. And we don't want to be the first case to test this out either. So in a situation like this, what do you guys do, right? So let's say that, going back to this document, well, first and foremost, you have the ability to, obviously you need to educate and inform and warn the client and let them know what this document is and how it impacts them, and give them a couple of scenarios on how that could show up. You could counter back and you could strike just the paragraphs that are concerning to you. So if it's this paragraph that concerns you, you can do a strike through on this paragraph. You could delete their entire addenda if you wanted to. If that, again, this is a negotiation, so you're also trying to remain competitive, or you can explain it to the buyer. And if the buyer says, yeah, I'm not concerned about any of the things that you warned me against, then the next best thing to do is going to be to follow up in an email and let them know, per our conversation, we had a discussion about location, in this case, locations addendum, and it alters the purchase contract in the following ways. I gave you examples on how that could show up and warned you against some of the scenarios that could happen as a result of accepting this contract or this addendum, and you instructed me to proceed forward. That's it. And then, so we've warned them. We've done what we're supposed to do.
Hey, Chad, can I chime in?
Please. Yep.
Also, when you get to the purchase contract, if that's going to be the case on the locations, say when they use that addendum, just make sure that you have adequate time in section I, extend it out to 15 days. So, the time frame is not that short on you.
So, section I1, I2, make sure you have adequate, or not I1, I2, but I3 and I4, the time frame that the buyer has to review and effectively respond or have additional inspections if needed, or whatever the case is. Make sure that that's an adequate amount of time. I put a little screenshot. This is I2 of the purchase contract. So I showed you the SRPDS in the previous slide. This one is I2 of the purchase contract. So if you notice here, it says nothing with regards to reports and third party and all that other kind of stuff too. So again, it's a little bit dicey. I understand why those other firms are doing that. It just makes it easier for them, and it's kind of closing a window and a contingency on the buyer when they're on the sell side. But I don't agree with it. I'm sure they've had their own legal counsel review it or whatever the case is. But again, it creates a potential legal conflict. So make sure that you understand what they're doing and how they're doing it, and warn and advise your clients accordingly. So here's Sotheby's one. So we talked about locations. Here's Sotheby's. And again, just an example, automatic amendment to disclosure statement. So they have something that's similar, and I'll give you, I'll read just this top portion here. Buyer and seller agree that if later discovered facts consist of all or portions of the report, documents, or other written information that is furnished by seller to buyer, including, for example, written reports and documents described in paragraph G1, J1, home inspection, K2, which is survey, L2, TIR, M1, condo and association documents, M3, and N2, which is rental documents. Each is called a required document. And then any required document furnished prior to or at the same time as delivery of the disclosure statement shall be considered to be incorporated within the disclosure statement without any further action on the part of the seller. So again, those things are huge to understand and to know. Moving on, they also have a termite provision. Purchase contract paragraphs L1, L2, L3 are amended as follows. Seller acknowledges that seller has disclosed in the disclosure statement what seller knows about termite infestation. What I find interesting about this is they have this addendum in here, and you would receive this addendum when opening up escrow prior to even receiving the SRPDS. So it's already funny to begin with, or curious to begin with. The seller acknowledges that the seller has disclosed it. Well, they may not have even disclosed it yet. Under paragraph L2, seller is required to obtain and provide to buyer a termite inspection report. Buyer understands that the TIR is an important document that should be reviewed closely, and that the TIR may not disclose in the existence of latent or hidden termite infestation or damage of which seller and the brokers are not aware. If TIR does not disclose visible evidence of active termite infestation or damage caused by termites, buyer may not cancel the purchase contract. Okay. Termite provisions number 2. Purchase contract paragraph L2 is amended as follows. If at no fault of the seller, this purchase contract does not close, buyer hereby instructs escrow to pay for the cost of the TIR from the buyer's deposits in escrow and to subtract such amount from any of the buyer's deposits that may be returned to buyer. So now this is coming into, it's going to cost the buyer money to cancel in certain scenarios, right? It's going to, the actual cost of the TIR, which is typically a seller expense. Associate subdivision document. So this is affecting M1. Purchase contract in paragraph M1 is amended by adding to the end thereof the following. Notwithstanding the foregoing, if seller has attempted to obtain the documents from a property manager who has custody of such documents and such are not available from the property manager, seller shall not be required to provide it to the buyer. So this is making a change where it's in normal practice, the seller is absolutely required to provide all documents, period. This is saying, hey, they can, and how this can show up is, hey, property manager, can you provide some information? I don't have information. I don't keep that. Hey, listen, there's nothing. So that's kind of the end of the conversation. I'm not going to not to my knowledge, not going to write a letter explaining that. They're not going to add it to the SRPDS. This is kind of giving them an out that they can make that request to a property manager. And if nothing's available, then it kind of is what it is. It continues. Purchase contracts paragraph M3 is amended by adding the following. Seller is not required to provide any additions, supplements, modifications, and amendments to the documents in paragraph M1 that are issued during the escrow period. Buyer may choose to obtain these items at buyer's sole cost. So again, that changes things with anything that might show up for building permit packages and other things. It's the buyer's expense if they want to get that remedied. So this is moving on to another firm, Help You Sell. By the way, I'm not suggesting in any way that the firms that we're discussing are marred or we're trying to make a check against them, don't do business with them. We just pulled like literally a handful of addenda from other firms that might have language amending the purchase contract. If you take anything away from this at all, is read every single addenda from every single firm thoroughly. Help You Sell has automatic amendment to disclosure statement. It's very similar to the other ones as well. Termite provisions. So you see kind of a theme here. If the TR contains no visible evidence, yada, 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 buyer may not cancel the purchase contract. So that's a theme there. C, if buyer requests TR to be delivered prior to conditional loan approval and the transaction is canceled because buyer does not receive final loan approval and or buyer cancels the contract for any reason not due to the fault of the seller, the TR invoice shall be paid from buyer's escrow deposit. So we saw that theme in the previous one as well. Better Homes and Gardens. This is the same thing affecting I2. So purchase contracts paragraph I2, I3, I4 are amended as follows. Buyer and seller agree that all information that directly, substantially, and adversely affects the value of the property contained in reports and documents received by buyer, including without limitation, those reports and documents as described in paragraph E3, G1, J1, K2, L2, the usual suspects, shall automatically become later discovered information upon receipt of such information by buyer, and such reports and or documents shall be deemed seller's amended disclosure statement under paragraph I2. And if applicable, buyer's rights under paragraph I4 and I5 shall apply. When the disclosure statement is amended under these circumstances, paragraph I3A shall not apply, and instead this addendum shall constitute buyer's written receipt of seller's amended disclosure statement effective as of the date the buyer's received in receipt of the applicable latter discovered information. So this completely alters a few different sections that are really, really important to understand. So again, doesn't mean that you shouldn't do business with that particular firm. It doesn't mean that you should, if you see this document, you should strike it out or delete it in its entirety. What this is you got to understand what it is and how it impacts and how it could impact your transaction. And then act accordingly, because if you're advising your client, you may have one client that has no problem with it whatsoever, and that's totally okay. You've warned them, you've advised them, you're going to email them to follow up that you've warned them, and they proceed forward, and it's fine. You may also consult with a client with the same information, same firm, same addenda, and they may say, absolutely not, I don't feel comfortable with that, and that's okay. In fact, you should have different outcomes because every client has different goals and priorities. So the main thing is to understand the information and then consult with them and warn and advise. This one is one that I see that comes up, especially with Better Homes, but there's a couple of other firms too. Know that we're only giving one example of Better Homes and locations, but to my knowledge, Coldwell Banker Locations as well as Better Homes has their firm's addenda that is depending on if they're on the buy side or sell side, and it's different. So it'll favor their client in that respective transaction. So this one says unilateral right to extend. So as you guys know, paragraph F3A in the newest iteration of the purchase contract as of May of 2019 is not a bilateral or a bilateral agreement. It's a unilateral. So either party can extend. And if you have 10 days in there, just an example for F3A, if you use 1 or 10, you've burned that provision altogether. It doesn't matter if it's on the buy side or the sell side. So this is how this changes it in this case. Paragraph F3A of the purchase contract is amended as follows. If a party exercises only a portion of the extension period set forth in paragraph F3A, then the other party shall have the option of exercising any remaining unused portion of said extension period. Therefore, time shall be of the essence, and the scheduling closing date may not be further extended unless buyer and seller agree in writing. So what does that look like? Let's say hypothetically you have in F3A of the purchase contract, you have 10 days. So as the contract is written, if you're on the buy side and you extend F3A by 5 days, then even though there's 10 days in there, you extend it by 5 days, that entire provision, you've used it, that provision is completely burned. No other person no other party can use it. What this is saying, however, is if on the buy side you used 5 days, then the sell side can also use the remaining portion of those days. The remaining, whatever's remaining in this example, will be 5 days. So that's really, really important to understand and to know. And again, act accordingly. It continues. Termites. Paragraph L2 of the purchase contract is amended as follows. If the licensed pest control operator selected finds visible evidence of the termite infestation, then treatment shall be ordered. Seller shall be responsible for up to, but not more than blank, whatever blank is. And they usually put obviously they're going to put a value in there toward the cost of treatment. Buyer shall be responsible for any amounts in excess of said amount agreed to be paid for by seller. So this is a big one too, because the largest thing, I mean, in my opinion, in my experience, TIR can usually result in one of two things. It's spot treatment that is anywhere from, a couple $100 to remedy, and it's pretty simple, or it's full-blown tenting and fumigation. And the tenting and fumigation can be thousands of dollars depending on how old the property is, how large it is, if it's 2-story, and some other, specifics on the property itself. So this could be huge. I mean, what if it said not more than $1,000 and it's a single family home that was built in 1940 that's 2 stories? That's not going to be $1,000. That's going to be probably, $3,000, $3,500, $4,000 even. I've seen very, very expensive fumigation costs before. If a certificate of treatment is not provided within the time period specified in paragraphs L2, buyer may elect to terminate this purchase contract pursuant to paragraph 03. Upon closing, buyer acknowledges and agrees to take the property in as is conditioned with respect to any termite infestation and or damage. So it's really that first one that is a game changer. Association subdivision documents. This is again for Better Homes and Gardens Addenda. Paragraph M1 of the purchase contract is amended as follows. Seller's responsibility to provide documents shall be limited to ordering the standard association subdivision document packet from the providing property management company. If any of the documents itemized in paragraph M1 are not readily available at the time of the seller's initial request, then seller shall have no obligation to provide such documents at any time thereafter, unless such documents is required under paragraph M3 or HRS section 508D and is available after good faith efforts by seller to obtain such documents. This one is a little bit tricky because it's not very specific. I mean, good faith efforts is kind of clear, but it very easily can be used like, hey, we tried and it's just not available. So sorry, there's nothing we can do. And you would hope that they would provide certain, each lender is a little bit different. We're seeing nuanced things. And if Carrie and Chris are on, you can chime in terms of the transaction, but some lenders are asking for a few things that are above and beyond what would be normal in terms of condominium and association documents. So make sure that as on the buy side that you're checking with the lender to find out what specifically they're going to look at and need that may be outside of the norm on condominium documents. This is not a brand name or well-recognized or a large group, but it's Hawaii Pacific Realty. And they have something on here that's unusual. Time limit if appraisal is less than the purchase price. In the event the appraised value is less than the purchase price, buyer shall notify seller in writing within 72 hours of notification of the appraised value of his or her decision to either proceed with the consummation of the transaction or cancel this contract pursuant to termination provision 02 or 03 of the contract, thereby enabling the seller to remarket the property. If buyer fails to respond within this time period, seller has the option to declare the contract null and void. It's huge. Termite report. purchase contract pursuant to provisions L2, L3, L4 are amended as follows. And this is pretty in line with some of the other stuff as well. There's Corcoran. Concessions. If paragraph J1 is amended, paragraph J1 is amended as follows. If buyer has submitted a repair and or credit request in writing to the seller within the time frame specified in J1, and the seller has not responded in writing, the J1 timeframe shall be automatically extended by 5 days. It's huge. So this one obviously benefits the buyer, not the seller. So if J1 is a 10-day contract and the buyer has made a request, the J1 doesn't expire in the typical 10 days. It's automatically extended in this particular addenda. This is later discovered information affecting.
Chad, one more thing on that is that, then they have 3 days to review the seller's response, so they could drag that out another 3 days. So, your 10-day J1 just went to 18.
That's a great point. Thank you for saying that. Later discovered information affecting I-2. It's kind of typical. This is actually the last one. So this is a short class, but we want to leave it open for any questions too. But timeline. If checked and a contingency falls on a weekend or state and or a federal holiday, it shall be moved to the next business day. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but it impacts the purchase contract, because I looked in the language of the purchase contract and there's nothing in there that states that already. All right, people, that's pretty much it. There's nothing. I mean, if you take anything away from this at all, it's going to be, you got to read the addenda. You have to understand it. You got to read it. You got to make sure that there's nothing in there that can negatively impact your negotiation, your strategy, how you plan to move the contract forward, how you plan to negotiate certain things, because this could alter it greatly. Does anyone have any questions at all? Any scenarios that you've run up against? Anything that I may have missed in terms of addenda that might be harmful that we all should know of? It's literally the fastest class we've ever done. Tony said, I want to give you guys a warning. He said, listen, it's my birthday and I'll be damned if I work any later. This class had better finish in 30 minutes flat. I'm just walking right out the door, is what his exact words were. So I'm trying to honor the birthday boy's wishes.
Yeah, but you're already late, Chad.
I'm clearly behind. I didn't honor your birthday at all. Yeah, listen, if no one has any other questions, that's it. We just wanted to make sure that these are things that keep coming up. And next month, what I'm trying to organize is a title and escrow class, because there's so many questions for both new agents and experienced agents on how certain things work, at what time does title insurance kick in, and certain rules on escrow, and why, if we cancel and rightfully within the guidelines of the contingency and contract, why can't we get our earnest money just returned to us? Why do we have to wait for the seller to approve those kind of things? Those are all questions that keep coming up, and we'll have an expert come in and chat with us about that in December. So if there is other classes that you guys want and other information that you guys need, just email me and we'll create a class for it. So I appreciate it. Fastest class ever. I'm super excited. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend, and call me if you need me. Take care, everyone.
For the birthday wishes, everyone. Appreciate it. Thank you.